Welcome everyone to this community call for sharing and coordinating Canadian COVID-19 web archiving efforts. And this, as you know, is organized by the Canadian Web Archiving Coalition, also known as CWAC. And we are being led by Corey Davis today, along with a group of folks who are going to get our discussion started from a few different organizations. Alors, bienvenue à tous à cet appel de la communauté. C'est organisé par la Coalition canadienne de l'archivage web, CACAO, ou bien CWAC en anglais. Alors, on a vraiment hâte d'entendre vos contributions. C'est Corey Davis qui va mener la discussion, mais avec plusieurs autres invités, comme vous pourrez voir. Juste pour commencer la discussion, on a aussi très hâte d'entendre vos contributions, savoir où vous en êtes avec l'archivage web autour de la COVID-19. Alors, I will pass things over to Corey to get things started.
Merci. Thank you very much, Lise, and thanks to all of you that are joining us today for this really important discussion during these very interesting times. I hope everyone is staying very safe and healthy. I would, first of all, just like to acknowledge that I'm speaking now from the traditional territories of the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations, and it's a real honor to be joined by a great group of people here. So first and foremost, Lise, thanks so much for all your support and guidance through this. And also Julie from Carl is also joining us. And we have Nick from University of Toronto, myself and Sylvain and Mireille. I'd like to especially thank them for enabling all of the participants to contribute in either of our official languages. And also to Jefferson Bailey, who's going to be providing us with some information from Internet Archive. And thanks, Jefferson, again for rearranging your schedule so you could join us today. Now I'm going to pass it back to Lise just to say a few words about how this will kind of structurally work and how to use Zoom with such a large number of attendees, so that it's really today's discussion. We will have some updates from some of the major institutions that I'll be calling upon. They don't know yet, but they will soon. And then we're going to open it up for a roundtable, not only for people to provide updates on what you're actually collecting, but some other discussion too, I think, around how this kind of stuff works, how it's been impacting you, and ideas for how we might move forward. So Lise, would you like to say a few words about how we're going to have attendees contributing?
Sure, you bet. So I will mention right off the bat that we are recording this session, and we do plan to release it for those who were not able to attend. And also just to make sure that we've captured all of your feedback. I'm not sure that we'll be scrambling to take notes quite fast enough. So we wanted to make sure we would have everything documented, but we did want to share with you that it will be recorded. Alors, on voulait savoir qu'on est en train d'enregistrer cet appel et on a l'intention de le partager avec ceux qui ne pouvaient pas être avec nous aujourd'hui. So yes, as Corey said, we'll be starting with a few invited folks to speak a little bit, and then down the line, once that discussion has started, once we get a little further along, we'll invite all of you to speak up when you wish. We do know there's a lot of people on the line, so we will ask you to raise your hand or request access to the microphone in order to be able to speak up. And hopefully we'll be able to do that as quickly and seamlessly as possible. You're also most welcome to put text questions, comments into the chat box. If you just have a quick note or if you have a question for whoever's speaking, please go ahead. Alors, I'll just say that in French super quickly. Si vous avez quelque chose à contribuer, évidemment, on va commencer avec les établissements BAC et BANQ, Internet Archive et U of T, à qui on a demandé de dire quelques mots au départ, mais vous aurez la chance de parler de vos activités ou ce que vous aimeriez faire un peu plus tard dans cette session. Alors, je vous demanderai de patienter un peu, mais vous aurez la chance de parler, c'est sûr. Vous pouvez lever la main virtuelle ou demander permission de parler. Et on va essayer de faire ça de façon ordonnée, espérons, sans trop de difficultés. Vous pouvez aussi, si vous avez des questions ou petits commentaires rapides, utiliser la boîte à discussion. Alors, I think that pretty much covers everything. Je remercie finalement Sylvain et Mireille qui sont là aussi pour accommoder s'il y a des gens qui désirent parler en français, allez-y de l'avant et on va s'assurer que s'il faut traduire, on peut essayer de le faire aussitôt que possible. Et en tout cas, on s'assurera de récolter tous les commentaires à la fin. I think that's enough. I think that's it from me, Corey.
Oh, merci. Thank you, Lise. Yeah, so let me see here. I found this image last night in a New York Times article. This is actually taken during the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918 in the small town in Alberta that I grew up in. Just as a reminder that, you know, these are not necessarily unprecedented times, but I sort of thinking about in terms of us as memory organizations and the work that we have ahead of us. You see the credit here from the University of Calgary Archives and Special Collections, where today in High River, the same small town, this image is actually from a screen capture from Global News video taken on the same street that the previous image was from. There is a meat processing plant just outside of town that has had a major outbreak. And so COVID-19, there are actually more cases in High River than there are on Vancouver Island right now. And this just to sort of remind me that this has happened before. But for us, it's just a little bit different this time in terms of what we need to do to ensure that future generations have access to this material so that we can learn from this very important experience. And this was actually, you know, it's funny because again, 1918, again, another library, special collections, this one from the University of Alberta, the Peel Prairie Library, from a newspaper from Edmonton back in 1918 about how, from the Alberta Board of Health, how to make masks, how to make your own face mask. And this information captured very effectively, distributed online. And now we're in this world where our news is just coming from such, and our information is from such different places. And here's again, a screenshot of Sanjay Gupta over 100 years later, sort of demonstrating a very similar thing. So I just wanted to kind of, I don't know why I wanted to do that, but just to kind of show that, you know, these are not unprecedented times, but our work has definitely changed very much as libraries, as archives, as other memory organizations. And I wanted to put these, you know, put a couple ideas out there in terms of how we might want to frame the conversation before we start updating each other. One of the things that I've really noticed in a lot of the collections that have been built around COVID-19 is the coherence. And so, you know, Jefferson and Sylvain especially, I think, sort of thinking about the IIPC collection. And in some ways, a lot of these collections are very, you know, it's a capture from the Kentucky Public Health Board, and then it's something that's happening in Croatia, et cetera, et cetera. And I wonder, in terms of coherence in our own collections, the challenges that people might be having around what they have decided to capture and how that's gone. And then how does that sort of play out at the national level in terms of something as simple as, you know, will High River have, that little small town in Alberta, have be able to access this kind of information going forward in the future. Also, just this structurally in your organization, how prepared were you to respond to these events, and what could we learn from that moving forward, how we might align ourselves better, what mechanisms we might want to work on in terms of being even more prepared for the next time something like this happens in terms of web archiving. And then just this last point here, I just really wanted to stress this idea, and I woke up to this during an Archives Unleashed hackathon, where the collections we're building are also going to be used in the future as data, where machine learning, natural language processing is, and I'm just wondering if people have sort of thought about how they're building collections through that lens, as we're studying this event in the future through that lens. I just wanted to put that out there. I will share these links to with participants and through the CWAC, but just some examples of some of the collections that have been and are being created. In particular, the National Library of Medicine and the UK Web Archive are building on collections that started with other pandemic or epidemic outbreaks. So they've actually had structures in place and they're building on these collections, which is interesting to me. And then what I'll do here is if I can, in a moment, I will copy and paste the spreadsheet. And thanks to Nick for getting this off the ground. This is a place where you can contribute what your institution is doing in a way that we could share our collecting activities. I think what I'd also like to do is use the CWAC listserv as much as possible to continue this conversation after today. We're not going to hit everybody. We're not going to get all of our thoughts out in this short amount of time. And so to really try to continue the conversation using that that listserv, I know it's kind of old school technology, but I like it. And we'll see if we can't sort of use that as a platform to extend this conversation after today. So with that, what I'd like to do, if this is okay with folks, and feel free, anyone that represents any of these institutions, because I did not tell you that I'd be specifically calling upon you. These 4 institutions do not represent everything, obviously, that's going on in the world or within Canada or within universities, but are right now probably well, they're quite active, and I know in terms of universities, we'll start with University of Toronto. When we turn it over to the roundtable, we'll get a lot of other input from other organizations. But I was just hoping that we could start with Jefferson, with you, just giving us more of a global perspective from what the Internet Archive it is doing, some new initiatives around COVID, and then step over to Sylvain and Tom, and then Mireille and Dave, BA&Q, and then pass it over to Nick. So if that works for folks, Jefferson, do you mind if I turn it over to you now, just to give us, maybe like 3, 4, 5 minutes of the kind of stuff that's happening at your organization?
Sure. Can you hear me? Audio good?
Audio's good. And thanks again for joining us, Jefferson.
Yes, thanks, Corey, and to Carl and CWAC for the invitation. I guess I'll try to run through all the stuff that's going on really quickly to give everyone else time to talk. So we are definitely heavily focused on COVID/coronavirus web archiving activities at multiple levels. So I'll talk about at least some of the specific ones that are happening in our department and team. There are some other sort of news aggregation, like bulk harvest kind of activities that the Wayback Machine sort of does automatically. But for us, it's more, collaborative and curated collection building. So the first one, which Corey referenced, was our work with the IAPC Collaborative Collection Development Group. They've been a longtime Archivate user, where we obviously are a co-founder and longtime member of IAPC. And so they have a great mechanism for getting a global set of partners to work on building collections. And obviously the COVID-19 situation is a global incident. It's also a local one, which I'll talk about, but so they already had a good framework in place. So we basically said, use all the data you need, go crazy. You have an amazing framework for getting a big global perspective on what to collect. So they've been doing that for, I guess, at least a month, maybe 6 weeks-ish. And I think the recent stats, they have about 4,000 archive sites in 40 or so languages from over 100 top-level domains. So that's great and amazing. I don't know what the data volume is offhand. It's probably in the 2 to 4 terabytes or so total. But they're heavily curated, heavily QA'd, excellent metadata. So they're really building an excellent collection. And we're helping them with some of the crawl management and aspects in the back end. But I think that's a really successful model at a global level. In the Archivate world, we've been monitoring what folks are doing with COVID-19 collecting. And a lot of people are interested, obviously, in documenting this moment and want more data and start building new collections, or a lot of folks have staff working at home that don't have much to do because their jobs are oriented towards physical activities or archival processing or things that can only happen in the building, and basically everybody's building is closed. So there's definitely been a significant uptick in folks web archiving, not just COVID stuff, but overall. For COVID specifics, last we looked earlier this week, it was between 115 and 120 organizations in Archive.it have about 130 to 150 collections that fall under COVID-19 or coronavirus. That accounts for about 20,000 seeds. In Archive.it language, of course, a seed can be a whole website or just a specific URL. We haven't differentiated that, but that's definitely a large number. And the total data volume looks to be over 10 terabytes total, so 10 to 15 terabytes. Just for a general perspective on the heavy use of, a lot of these crawls are running daily and there's lots of crawls. We've had about a 4 to 5x growth in number of crawls running at any one time in our infrastructure. So we had to go out and buy a whole lot of hardware, and it's awesome and exciting. So very heavy use and lots of people doing amazing work. We also work, of course, with a lot of national libraries outside of Archive.it, but also outside of Archive.it in contractual capacity. We've seen a number of them have wanted to run domain scale crawls right now, or they just ran one and they want to do another. So there's a lot of attempts by national libraries and large international organizations like UN or UNESCO to also capture at a sort of national level this moment. So those are all ongoing too. We also have an initiative with public libraries in the United States, and they're doing amazing work documenting the local impact, especially on underrepresented or underdocumented communities and how the COVID situation is impacting those. So we'll have some blog posts or announcements or just some storytelling around some of those events, but we've had calls with them over the last couple of weeks to find ways that we could help them scale up, especially a lot of them are furloughed or working from home. So I think there'll be some really interesting and out-of-the-box thinking around how to document the moment, and we'll publicize some of those stories. And so those are sort of some of the different areas where activity is happening. I did try to at least glance through the 120 or so Archive.it partners that are doing COVID collections, and there were a significant number of Canadian organizations in there, at least a dozen to 2 dozen or so. So I think there's good work happening there. Because of all this activity and interest, and we have a lot of new folks that want to start web archiving that never have, or that were only collecting their own institutional website and now want to do a lot more. We announced a quote unquote campaign earlier this week where we're basically going to heavily subsidize any additional data for anyone that wants to collect a lot more. It still, of course, costs us money to buy hardware and hire staff to account for some of this, but we're basically going to do it and eat all the cost for. So it's like 40, 50, 70% subsidy, totally free if you're totally bankrupt. We're basically just going to do whatever we can to allow people to use Archive.it, to expand their data budgets, to do whatever necessary. And we're also working on ways where we can find some of our own staff within Internet Archive that don't work on this, that could help run crawls or do QA for partners that have limited staffing resources at this moment. So those are some of the plans around there. We're going to, in the next week, try to do a little more research about what types of content people are archiving in these COVID and coronavirus collections. So just some basic folksonomic tagging, just to get a sense of how much is news and how much is local government and things like that. I mentioned we'll also publicize some of the more unique use cases around how people are trying to document the local impact. And so we should have some blog posts just sort of analyzing what people are doing, at least in the Archive.it world, and we'll push those out in the next couple of weeks. The last 2 points I'll make is that we are in the near future gonna figure out a unified access and discovery point. So we already do full text search of all these collections and metadata search, but we're gonna extract them from anybody that's doing coronavirus collecting and create a unified discovery layer that just points straight to those collections. So we'll probably ask people to sort of self-identify their collections if it isn't already obvious with some tag, and then we'll aggregate all that content so that you can search it. And then we will also be doing, as Corey mentioned, which I appreciate, stuff around generating data sets from all this material. That could be as simple as basic JSON dumps of all the seeds and metadata that people are using with this collection, but we'll also do things like entity extraction and other things like that. And I think for a lot of these collections, especially like the IIPC ones that we're building internally in Internet Archive, we're also open to sharing the actual work preservation data with people if they want a copy of that. So I think it'll take us a little while to generate some of these, so it might be a month or two out. But definitely generating data sets, we've already had a lot of interest from researchers for that. And so that'll be on the schedule as well. And I'll wrap it up there.
Jefferson, thank you so much. And for all the work that you're doing, it's really incredible, the attention and the resources that Internet Archive is deploying in this situation. There are some comments coming through on the chat. What I think I'll do is I'll just allow the next three organizations to do their update. Dan, we'll get to your question after that. And if we don't get to any questions, or if the conversation turns, I'll be sure to get everyone the information they need in terms of the questions they asked in the chat. So again, thank you so much, Jefferson. And I'd like to turn it over to Sylvain and Tom at Library and Archives Canada for their update.
Thanks, Corey. And thanks, Jefferson, for the update and about the work you're doing with IIPC as well. I think since I'm treasurer of IIPC, I'll just put a little plug in there to help out anybody who's interested in the work that IIPC is doing right now. We started doing the web content around COVID-19 in mid-February, and we've been accepting new nominations for crawls since then. You can still go to our website at netpreserve.org to put in your request. There's actually a link in there. So what we're actually focused on is on the published information resources that have higher seat priority than anything like social media or hashtags. We're covering any language in any country, and we're putting a priority on subtopics which include the coronavirus or origins, information about the spread of the infection, the medical scientific aspects, social, economic, or political. So if you go to the IIPC website, you can actually do a nomination for seeds, and we could be crawling it. Also, IIPC has a small budget usually of about 3 terabytes for doing crawls. With the help of Internet Archives, we're at about 5 now. We're looking to also make decisions on our budget to increase that as well. So we'll be continuing on. We're not going to limit our opportunities. It's a big opportunity for the work we do at IIPC. So a lot of the work on content development is going to focus solely on that this year. And if we do go ahead with the conference in Montreal in September, for sure, we'll have a lot of interest on the work that's been done. So I'm sure we'll be pivoting to some of that for presentations and research, and maybe more interest in what we're doing. For Library and Archives Canada, most of you will have seen the first report that Tom's team sent out about a week ago. It was shared to the CWAC. But if those who haven't received it, we'll make sure to send it out again. And it really is a history of the work we started on COVID at LAC for web archiving. And it's really all in Tom's team. So I'll turn it over to Tom so he can speak to how the work started and how they shifted their priorities solely to that, and what they're capturing, and how they're working with partners. So Tom?
Hi, thanks for that. So hi, I'm Tom Smythe. I lead the web archiving and social media program at Library and Archives Canada. I'm glad to be here today to give you a little bit of an overview of the work we've been doing, and I hope that you and yours are very well during these strange and bizarre times. I'll mention to start off that I think some of you may know, but Library and Archives Canada does some news and media crawling on a daily basis. We get the front page of a number of newspapers from coast to coast in both languages. So because we've been rolling media on an ongoing and daily basis for some time already, as soon as media began to get reported internationally about the COVID situation as it broke and as it broke, we at Library and Archives Canada started collecting material on this as early as December. So we have a methodology at LAC for responding to events, to significant events in Canadian history, documenting them so that we get a chronology of what happens, the events that occur as it unfolds. And we do that primarily, at the moment, we are crawling 17 different newspapers in both languages, and that also includes some key Indigenous newspapers. As I said, as Sylvain mentioned, we started in mid-February getting resources, and then we began collecting data from Twitter on about the 10th of March. So for us, in terms of the perspective, our scope of our project is very diverse, and our intention in terms of thinking about the data as something that could be mined, something that could be treated as data for researchers in the future. This impacts our scoping, and our scoping is very diverse, and we want to make sure that we have a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different sources, a lot of different types of commentary, and even sort of political spectrum in terms of, for example, we even collect things like a little bit of sampling of conspiracy theory, and some speculation on where the virus came from, and sort of just to ensure that we have a very diverse data set to make available for the future. So to say a couple of words about our scope. Our scope includes sorry, I lost my document. Our scope, as I mentioned, includes French and English news media, but it's also we're concentrating on capturing public health information from all levels of government, federal, provincial, and municipal. We're working on documenting the impact on the business and the economy, health, science, and medicine, including attempts at a vaccine within Canada, sites that talk about the social and cultural aspects, including religion and artistic and cultural expression, families' impact on schools, education, and so on, religion. We have, in terms of our social media activity, we are collecting the Twitter account of Dr. Teresa Tam at FAC. And we have ongoing capture of tweets from the hashtags COVID Canada, COVID-19 Canada, Canada lockdown, Canada COVID-19. We're doing that work through TWARC. So we're getting that data as well. In terms of our overall statistics to date, we have collected, as I mentioned, we're doing 17 newspapers. We have about 232 selected resources in our collection, about 440 seeds, coming up on about 3/4 of a terabyte. It's about 8.5 million assets. And to date, we've got about 410,000 tweets. So that's just an overview of, and we're very happy. There's been some coordination already. We're very happy to coordinate with everybody who's interested in discussing what we're collecting and how we can collaborate in terms of building seed lists. So thanks to Jefferson as well. We are archived members, and probably some of the hardware that was bought was for our purposes. Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, Sylvain and Tom, for the Library and Archives Canada update, and for all the work that you and your team are doing right now during this, as you said, rather interesting time. Mireille and Dave, would you turn it over to you folks and provide an update from BANQ?
Yes, I go ahead. So my name is Mireille Laforce. I'm Director of Legal Deposit at BANQ, and Dave Mitchell is a librarian in my team. So we started working with COVID-19 with the IPC harvest. So it was in mid-February. And but maybe 3 weeks ago, we decided to do something from our side also, and bigger also, so with more seeds than what we had sent to IPC. We have developed a scope. I've sent it, you can see it in the chat box, the link to the document. And so this is interesting to have heard about the LAC, because it is similar to what we are doing, but for Quebec, obviously. So you can see what the scope is. So the Quebec government websites. So from different level or different kind of government organism. Also parts of the websites of the City of Montreal and Quebec, parts of the websites of Quebec universities, and the same thing for main business websites, which are more impacted by COVID-19. Articles from national and regional newspapers. We also do regular harvesting of newspapers, but we wanted to do something where things about COVID-19 would be all put together. So we really have seeds specific to articles about it. We also harvest special reports or on pandemic from big news websites, event websites, also websites from professional corporations, and specific websites also that have been launched by the government during that period. So they created a website about Je Bénévole to get people volunteer for where there could be needs, and Le Panier Bleu et l'École Verte and all that. And so everything is gathered together. We also send a list of our seeds, which is in a Google sheet. I don't know if it's available for everyone, but we have no problem making it available, so you could see what are our seeds. I think at the moment we have about 2,000 seeds. Dave, is that
yes.
it?
Yes,
about 2,000, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you see the page of our seeds, there is 3, how do you say, onglets, 3
tabs.
Tabs, yeah, in the file, because we even if we harvest things, we cannot make them all available. But we sometimes yes and sometimes no. It depends if we have license to do it. So we have 3 types. So for harvest that we will have the possibility to make freely available, and things that we can only do internally, make them available internally, and things that we harvest but that we cannot show. At the moment, we don't have information on our own website about what we are doing, but next week I think we'll be available to make some things already available. The information about the harvest for sure, but also some parts of the harvesting. So I think it gives an idea of what we do at the moment. So it has been made really fast because but it's the same for all of you, I suppose, but to reorganize the work, to make everybody able to work from home, it was not like magical, but I think we're really proud to have moved fast and to start this specific harvest. So that would be that for my side. I don't know, Dave, if you want to complete with something.
I think you told almost everything. We don't have stats yet, but yes, maybe that will be available later. But I think you said almost.
Yeah, maybe I would add something, yeah, about Twitter, because it's not possible for us to harvest it. So we ask like maybe if they could help us about that, because this is something that is not possible from our side. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mary, and Dave as well. And disappointed, but understand, you know, that the IPC, I was really looking forward to the trip to Montreal next month, but know that you put a lot of work into that with other people, and hope that we can reconvene again. And I really appreciate your update. Thank you. Nick, I'm wondering if we might, not to sort of give you less time than other people, but just in the spirit of moving on to the roundtable, and again, we could explore having another call or continuing the conversation on CWAC, but if you could provide a brief update to the work that you're doing at U of T, and then we'll open it up to everyone. Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be super brief. So University of Toronto is pursuing a COVID-19 collection, being conscious of the IIPC collection and what is happening at LAC and BANQ. We decided to focus on local materials, so things that would be perhaps outside of the scope of those collecting initiatives. So mostly Toronto in focus, media, with an emphasis on local, small, diaspora, non-English language material, cultural organizations, things to do with relief efforts, small social initiatives, as well as institutions, our municipal government, our provincial government. Our scope kind of creeped a bit when Archives of Ontario reached out to us with a listing of all, an offer to curate Ontario COVID-19 material, like Ontario government material. So we scoped that into our collection. I guess I'll just really quickly wrap up. One thing that we've really been conscious of is what's missing in these collections. There's a really heavy emphasis on institutions, and it's really laying bare some of our curatorial limitations. So I just really put it out there that we need to partner with other organizations, other people in our community, because we just, yeah, it's too big. It's just too big of a project.
Yeah, it's big. And thank you so much, Nick. And I know that you're doing a lot of work out there as well, and really appreciate it. And Nick, I'd also just like to take a moment. Thank you for chairing the CWAC while I was away on research leave. Really appreciate you doing that. So thanks again. Now, folks, I'm going to turn it over to Roundtable. We don't have a heck of a lot of time, but I really wanted us to hear from some of the larger institutions, and I think it's quite important. But again, as Nick said, it's not all just about institutions, it's about people, it's about our communities. We're all impacted by this. As an example, perhaps we can use the raise your hand feature, and all of those who are still in their pajamas, can you please raise your hand? Let's just see. Okay, now you put your hand down now. Probably a few of you out there. So I'm going to turn it over to the community. Let's talk about it. Raise your hand if you'd like to unmute your microphone. And Lise, will you be able to do that? Yeah, or use the chat, whatever you prefer. And I do have a number of you I can call on if people are a little bit shy at the beginning. That's okay. So Lisa, are you able to see folks and control their microphones?
I'm
or
trying
yeah,
to unmute someone, and I'm for some reason it is not letting me.
Okay. I wonder if we...
Somebody else.
I can unmute myself. Did that work?
Hey, whoa.
Hey.
We weren't supposed to give you that authority, Dana.
I'll see what I can do for Sim.
Well, I think it was a two-step process.
Okay. Dana from VIU, thanks for jumping in. That's
Yeah.
Vancouver Island University. Thank you.
That's right. So I'd like to clarify that I'm neither in my pajamas nor from a larger place. But just to offer a brief update on behalf of VIU, but also UVic, and I believe we've got Matt Huckellett from UVic on the call perhaps today as well. We coordinated early on, and to your remarks earlier, Corey, I think what's working well for us is the extent to which we had established in the past some relationships and coordination around web archiving in the region. So we do have a little history of that. So when this crisis emerged, we were pretty quick off the ground to talk on Vancouver Island about how we could collaborate and make the most of our data budget and our best practices to get some coverage happening of how the crisis is affecting the region. So we have started collecting seeds and running test crawls and saving some content here.
Thanks so much, Dana, for that update. Yeah.
Sorry, I think Sam Chin wanted to speak. I'm not able to unmute you, so you can try to unmute yourself and see if that works.
Hi, I'm here. So what do you want me to talk about?
Oh, I'm sorry, you had your hand up. So,
it might have been for pajamas.
All right, I'm going to hand it over to Renee then, Renee Associé.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So hi everyone, I'm Renee and I'm from the Archives of Ontario. So as Nick said, we are starting to collaborate with U of T on their collection. We haven't started capturing anything yet. When we do, we'll be using Web Recorder, but we're currently in the stage of curating our seed list. Right now, our primary focus is capturing government social media channels, but we're also looking to kind of broaden the documentation of the impact of the pandemic on the province as a whole. So we're definitely very interested in collaborating directly with other organizations in Ontario, and in particular, seeing scoping documents and their seat lists so that we can try to not duplicate, but maybe fill any gaps that are emerging at the provincial level.
Thanks, Renee. Yeah, it's such important work. I don't know quite how to frame this, but I've been, it's brought out some good qualities in certain leaders in the province of Ontario. In terms of the social media channels, does anyone else have similar focus? Or, sorry, Lisa, I'll let you. I'm sure people are kind of lined up if you'd like to unmute the next person.
I'll mention that there is a note from Larissa in the chat. So if you want to have a look at that. And as well, we have Jeremy who's ready to speak, I believe.
Yes, that's right. Hopefully you can hear me. Yeah, I just wanted to address one of the things that Nick was saying, talking about trying to focus too much on institutions versus certain other aspects of this. And one of the things that we're looking at doing at Queen's University Archives, we just had a meeting with city representatives, museum folks in the city, and the library. And the Kingston Frontenac Public Library has a sort of a stories collector where they go out and they sort of conduct interviews to do oral histories and then make them available on their website. And we were chatting with them about what our individual roles are in this in terms of being passive versus active collectors of sort of all the different aspects of this entire situation. And that's one of the ways that we're hoping to sort of balance the institutional side is by then bringing in all of their stories that they have digitally online into our own collection for COVID-19 as well. So that I don't know if that's something else that other people are doing or interested in doing, but it's I think, one way that we can sort of mitigate this.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Hope you're doing well in beautiful Kingston and that spring is on its way.
Snow today.
Oh, okay,
Fun.
sorry. So sorry. Oh, man. Jeremy, you also had a question just earlier on for Jefferson around any suggestions for Archive-It partners to best scope their COVID-19 specific collections. Are there any specific resources on the Archive-It support site or available publicly to help folks get started and scope specifically around this?
Yeah, that's right.
Sure.
Yeah,
go ahead. You want me to answer?
Yeah,
oh,
please.
Sure. Yeah, I saw it in the chat and forgot to respond. That's a hard one to answer. There, if you go to support.archiveit.org, all our help documentation, including training videos and scoping suggestions, is public. So whether you're an Archiveit user or not, there will be information in there about how to scope specific seed types. It is a lot of social media and things like Wix and Squarespace. You need to include external domains to make sure it captures images and all kind of wonky stuff like that. Scoping tends to be a seed or website specific issue. So all the social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest have specific ones, but there could be, they could be using, they being the website creator could be using some CMS that has its own custom needs. So there's, in the support help documentation, there is scoping information for a lot of stuff, but not everything. So that's scoping for crawl quality. As far as appraisal type scoping, I think we hope to publish just some user stories about what folks are doing that could maybe give people ideas around, how to do appraisal and collection development aspects.
Thanks, Jefferson. Lise?
Yeah, we've got Yu Young from University of Ottawa. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you should be able to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, so
thank you for organizing first. So at the University of Ottawa Library, we have collected a list of CIS regarding the University of Ottawa, basically how we respond, including official communication, but also their Twitter, social media channel, but also students' newspaper. And we have also collected some Twitter hashtag with specifically Ottawa. So like Ça va bien aller is stay at home, coronavirus and COVID-19 Canada, using Twerk in in Compute Canada environment because data sets were really huge. But at the same time, we are discussing, so we are interested in collaboration with Carleton University to focus more on oral history perspective and documenting their journey or experience. So that's all. Thank you.
And I think we've got, I think we've got Tim Hutchinson next. And then I think there's a question from Susan Haig that we might want to discuss around other provincial governments and provincial healthcare systems info.
Great, thanks. It's Tim Hutchinson from the University of Saskatchewan. So as far as we know, we're the only ones in Saskatchewan with the capacity to do web archiving, which is both an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage is we don't have to coordinate too much. So we've actually extended our scope beyond what we had been doing before to include not just university, but provincial wide. So nothing too out of the ordinary in terms of the kind of seeds we're crawling. So what I wanted to highlight though, was as part of a related community archiving project, we're planning on communicating a custom hashtag that we'd like people to use if they want to contribute to the community archive. For example, to tag their photos on social media, the sorts of things that we likely wouldn't get otherwise if we're just going based on the main hashtags and key accounts to try to get some of the community response. That's a whole other discussion in terms of the community archiving piece, but that's where the web archiving sort of overlaps.
Thanks, Tim. Sorry.
I don't know.
Trying to figure out how to unmute my darn microphone here. Yes, Lise, did Susan?
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff going on in the chat, just so you know. But I did note Susan's question, which is, how well are other provincial governments and provincial healthcare systems information being captured beyond Quebec and Ontario? Are there gaps that could be quickly addressed? So I don't know if there have been responses. I see that Jeff is responding on behalf of Dalhousie, that they're capturing Nova Scotia government press releases and data. I haven't scrolled further down to see who else, if anyone else is responding to that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You know, I'm sort of thinking as a follow-up after this conversation that we may want to start identifying in, okay, yeah, Susan's BC sites there. We may want to start identifying some of those key areas and getting like people checking things off and where there's gaps, seeing who might be able to fill those. So thank you for that, Susan. Yeah, the BC websites, you're right. Yeah. Okay, so we're getting lots of, okay.
I don't see any new hands up. I don't know if any of the folks who have the permission to speak wanted to add anything, or if anybody else wants to raise your hand.
There's a question from Scholars Portal. To Jefferson again, could you explain more the process involved in receiving subsidy for creating a collection?
I think we tried to basically eat as much of the cost as was realistically possible. So it's a sort of sliding scale depending on institution size and length of web archiving activity and various other factors.
Okay.
So it's
how you're
on
feeling
data
that
budget.
day.
Yeah. What mood I'm in, how much coffee I've had, things like that. You know, we work with folks from huge international libraries all the way down to one-person nonprofit. So we try to be very flexible to meet people in a way that's realistic. So it's basically it's very negotiable, but now to enable people to collect COVID stuff, it's even more negotiable.
Great, thank you.
Basically, just contact us and let us know your use case, and we'll chat about it.
Thanks, Jefferson. Is anyone, yeah, the CGI folks, the Canadian Government Information folks, is there anyone that can speak to what is being collected right now through that initiative in terms of government information? If there isn't anyone on the line or anyone that can chat, I can reach out to folks afterwards and provide an update to CWAC. Okay. Lise, are there any more hands?
No, I think we've got some quiet folks just listening in.
No,
here.
it's okay. You know, let's follow up the conversation. Larissa has a question just about for COPL institutions. A lot of us are getting our, I say archive it, but Jefferson, I hear you're saying archive it. So maybe I should get used to it. Well, anyway, a lot of us are getting that consortially. Jefferson, would you prefer that individual institutions reach out to you, or would you like their consortial license people to talk to you about the potential data budget rates?
Yeah, that's a great question. Either way is fine. Maybe Corey, you and I can talk and we can figure out how to coordinate OCOPL activities, but I realize there are non-OCOPL folks on the call. So maybe it's worth just thinking of a Canada-wide solution, at least for this COVID situation.
Yeah.
And we work with obviously with LAC too, so we could try to figure out something that works for that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll follow up. That sounds great. Thanks, Jefferson. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be a good idea to try to centralize the conversations at least. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Lise.
Oh, that's okay. I was just, I think Jeff from DAL would like to say something.
Oh yeah, so along the lines, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so just thinking of data budgets, I've really struggled with social media crawls, and we have a fairly small data budget at Dalhousie. But I was wondering, you know, just basically doing a simple Twitter crawl, it kind of has to happen pretty much every day. And then if you do it without sort of nuanced scoping, you get gigabytes of useless data. Are people using other tools other than Archive It to capture social media content like Twitter? I heard someone earlier mention Twark. I'm just wondering if there's another tool perhaps that some of us might not be aware of.
Catherine is saying webrecorder.io. I might want to check that out.
Okay, that's awesome.
Lise, just a quick question. Do you get a text transcript of the chat?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. If you could forward that to me, there's a number of suggestions that I will deal with all of these through the CWAC. I won't obviously bombard you with a million emails right away, but I will follow up. There's been some really good suggestions about how we might support each other through these activities, not only in terms of sharing what we are actually collecting, but how to more effectively do that. And as Susan mentioned as well, identifying significant gaps that that may be there in certain jurisdictions where there isn't active collecting happening right now. So look for some follow-ups there. Oh, I see that LAC is using Twark as well. So U of T and okay, yeah, so social feed manager. Sorry, I'm just if you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm randomly reading the chat feature as I'm trying to talk to us at the same time. But we're at the end of time right now, so I just I would again first and foremost like to thank all of you for attending. I really hope you're staying safe and healthy and managing okay through this very challenging time. I'd like to thank Carl for the support in organizing this, and for Jefferson, Nick, Mireille, Sylvain, and Julie for being a part of the call, and Dave as well from being in queue. So I really appreciate this, folks, and we will continue the conversation on the CWAC listserv. Please reach out to me individually if you have any concerns or questions, or you'd like me to point you in the right direction on anything, or if you need clarification. And we'll be speaking very soon. I really appreciate it. Take care, everyone, and have a wonderful day at home. Bye.